Our next speaker is Joanne McDowall, and Joanne has her DTM. She's been a past district director. She has been a club coach 6 times, and sometimes her clubs have achieved success and became distinguished, and other times the outcomes were more variable. Each time she learned about information about different club culture and about herself. In this session, she's going to talk about how to rebuild a club and the tools that have proven to be successful over the years. So please help me welcome Joanne McDowall on club coaching.
Used to be back in the old days, people could hear me. Can you hear me? All right, then I think I'm going to wander a little bit and be untethered from that lectern. If at some point my voice starts to fade off, somebody wave at me and I'll go back to using the microphone. Is that a fair deal? Excellent, thank you. I would like to do a very brief survey. How many of you are here listening to this presentation simply because you're in a club that has low membership and you're interested in knowing what a club coach could do for you? I'm seeing a few hands. And how many of you are in a club that is strong and you're willing to take your skills on the road and be a club coach for another club? I want to talk to you afterwards. Alfred, you're too busy. And how many of you already have a club coach and you wonder what the heck this person is doing in your club? No, that is good. Oh,
we're both looking at Ken.
Yeah, you don't necessarily want to come out and say that. And how many of you are here because there's nowhere else to go and you want to actually hear David Story's presentation?
Well, we love you, Joanne.
So this is the first time I'm doing a big presentation since 2 years of cancer and Parkinson's disease. So it's going to be a little bit, thank you, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for me in some moments. If you see me falter, please give me just an inch of room so that I can recover myself. Thanks so much. All right, what you see in this slide is that the club coach, in my perspective, is an agent of change. In the old days, when we would get assigned to be a club coach, what would happen is they would say, you're a club coach, read this book on how to coach a club, and then they would just sort of send you off without a lot of direction. And in many cases, all we did was become one more club member who was working too hard at fulfilling agenda items, and one more member who wasn't doing anything structural to change what was going on for the club. It was a very easy but frustrating place to be, and like many of the other members, we would get together for our final party, divide up the assets of the club, and that would be the end both of the role as club coach and also of the club. Other times, though, there were club coaches who would come in who really got it, who really got that their purpose was not just to be one more warm body in the room. Their purpose was to actually do something, to actually work with the club executive and help them to overcome the barriers that were keeping them back from success. And that's what the kind of club coach that I want to talk to you about today. So, first of all, what is a club coach? Why do we even need them? Certainly, Most clubs know what it took to get the club going in the first place. Most clubs know intuitively a lot of the things that, it's Ed, right?
Yes.
That Ed was talking about today. That you have to be running quality meetings, that you have to be inviting guests, that you have to be welcoming your guests and encouraging them to join. And yet, they still were not successful. So the purpose of the club coach is to step in and to take a look at the club with the club and see what can be changed, what can be altered, what can be tweaked. And sometimes it's just a really small tweak that can help that club to turn around. What they do is they go into the club and they have to negotiate with the executive and with the members to make changes. And sometimes the members and the executive are not willing to hear that because they've always done it this way. And in the past, it was always successful. So why do they have to make a change? Well, it's simple, because if you don't make a change, then you close down your shop. The job of the club coach, and I cannot emphasize this enough, is not simply to be just another warm body in the room, another speech maker, another evaluator. The job of the club coach is structural, and it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And when you step into the role of club coach, you step into it knowing that there is a specific timeline for your task. Oh, I just want to stay here. The other thing that they are not there to do is to should all over that club. Your job is not to tell them what they have to do, to demand, to parent. None of those things are part of the activities of the club coach. The club coach is there to provide a supportive person who will help them to make change. So why would you volunteer? Because it's a lot of work. Just plain and simple, why would you volunteer? Well, you get leadership experience. In many ways, being a club coach is like being an area governor or an area director for one club. You work with that club to take a cold, hard look at themselves and then make suggestions. Toastmasters International recognizes the club coach, a successful club coach, as part of the DTM program. And if you were to be assigned as a club coach this year, and it's an unusual year, but if you were to be assigned as a club coach this year, and the club you are coaching completes their distinguished program requirements and becomes distinguished by June 30th, then you will get a credit that would be equal to being an area governor, so an area director. I will never learn. There's also an opportunity there to do a high-performance leadership project. And for many people who are almost at their DTM under the old program, those are the two things, the two criteria that are holding them back from getting their DTM. They don't have a high-performance leadership project, or they are missing that executive position on the district. So this allows you to fulfill those requirements. It gives you a chance to meet new people, talk to others, learn what the culture is of other clubs. And you have the chance to make a significant change and to actually save a club. And I cannot tell you how gratifying that is. I participated as a club coach at the time when Crossroads was having a real downturn. People like Lily and Mavon, people like Stan Penner, Ken Parrott, we got together and we made a decision that we were going to save that club. And it was a lot of work. But we had a huge celebration at the end of the year and were able to celebrate it with a revitalized Crossroads Club. And Crossroads, just so you know, Ed, was right at one of our core clubs in the district. And it was so important to save that club. I can't tell you how gratifying that was. For the Club Coach Award, in order to receive it, within 2 years of your appointment, the club has to become distinguished. Now, if you join a club which last year ended its year with 8 members, how many members do they need to become distinguished this year? 5 more. So if they ended with 8, they need 13. But if at the end of the year you get them up to 12, and you still want to continue and complete your club coach requirements, then the following year they need 17. So it's easier if you can do it in the first year, if you can accomplish it in the first year. For the HPL, for the High Performance Leadership, I'd like you to note that success in the high performance leadership is not predicated on whether the club becomes distinguished. So if that is one of your goals, you can take on a high performance leadership project and set yourself up as having specific goals that are not necessarily linked to distinguished. TI has a stack of tools for you, and I'm not being all-inclusive here by any means, but the most important one is the little book you get, and you can download it from the website, How to Rebuild a Toastmasters Club. And there are so many good evaluation tools in there and suggestions. And one of the suggestions in that book is the troubleshooting guide, which I handed out to everyone. Did anybody not get a copy of the troubleshooting guide? So that book, How to Rebuild a Toastmasters Club, covers every aspect of your activities. I'm not going to read it to you, and I'm not going to detail it to you today. I just want you to know that if you have a club that is a lone member club, and if you don't have a coach, you can go through that book, How to Rebuild a Toastmasters Club, and get the skills that you need and bring it to your club, and together the club has the opportunity to do the work on their own. If you still need help, then you can reach out to the district. But a lot of times, clubs have the ability to do it on their own. So while I'm here to talk about the Club Coach program, I want you to know that without a coach, you can still rebuild your Toastmasters Club. The strongest tool that we have for rebuilding a Toastmasters Club, and I'm not going to go through the details of it again because we did hear about it in a lot of detail already this morning from Ed, is of course the Moments of Truth program. Because what that lets you do is do an honest assessment of what's going on in your club. And then the final significant tool that we have from Toastmasters is Speechcraft. 2 little books, the Speechcraft Workbook and the Speechcraft Coordinator's Guide. I have found this to be the most important and valuable tool that there is for rebuilding a Toastmasters Club, because you advertise, you charge people so they get it right up front. They come in for a short time and they fall in love with the program. When I was doing my, I guess, second club coach task, I went to the club and we went through all of the evaluation processes in the club. And I said, what have you tried? And they said, we tried this, and we've tried this, and we've tried this. They were trying to prove to me that they were not easily letting go of their club. They really valued the club. And they had tried, and they had tried, and they had tried. And then they said they had tried Speechcraft. And I was surprised, very frankly, because for me, Speechcraft had always been such a powerful offering and so successful as a membership tool builder. And I paused for a second and I said to them, so what happened when you did your Speechcraft? Did people come? Oh yes, they said. And I said, and then what happened to them? And they said, they joined the club. So I said, why aren't we doing another Speechcraft? Well, we already tried that. That's an honest statement. And I said, but it worked. Yes. So what would happen if we tried it again? And they said, oh. And that's the purpose of having a club coach there. Because the only value that I brought to that club was reminding them of the things that had worked in the past, because they had given up on everything and they had forgotten what they'd been able to do in the past. So how many of you are familiar with this Speechcraft program? Or I should probably ask, how many of you are not familiar with the Speechcraft program? Okay, there are a few hands. This is a very affordable program. The workbooks, I think, are $250 US. They're, once you get your hands on a set, you can advertise, and the most important thing is incorporating that Speechcraft into your regular club meeting. So your Speechcrafters, or your boot camp participants, as some clubs like to call them now, these people can come into your club, see what's actually going on, find out what it means to have friendly and supportive evaluations, and they work through a limited program, get a certificate at the end, and then you invite them to join the club. And if you've charged enough for the boot camp activity, you can tell them, oh, by the way, what you've already spent will go towards subsidizing your membership. And you can then take that, what they've already given you, put it towards their membership, and they just sort of flow into the club. So when you are a club coach, you have a team. And you have to realize you're not going in there as the savior to do it alone. The club executive is the most important part of your structural team. They have to be on side. And if they're not willing to make changes, if they just want you to fix them, that isn't going to work. So you have to be understanding that they are a critical part of the team. Your area director, I got it right, you see, because I wrote it down. Your area director is also a critical part of your team. There may be times where you aren't able to get to a meeting, or where you need an augmented, I don't know what the word is, brain fog. You need more bodies. Your area director is frequently the person to call on. And the district can also support you if you're having a demo meeting or an open house. Because a lot of times you want to be able to have the executive of the club focusing on doing just what Ed suggested, inviting those guests to join and reaching out to those guests, they're busy, so you need more people to run that demo meeting. In that case, if you're the club coach, you can call on the district for help with a demo meeting. So how does a club qualify for a coach? Well, you have to have fewer than 12 members. And you have to have at least one. I know that sounds obvious, but in fact there are several clubs that didn't pay their dues in October, and I've been contacted by at least one who said, we need a club coach, and I said, 0 members. So I can't do anything. Toastmasters International will not allow us to name a coach for a club that has 0 members. Some of the members from last year have to rejoin in order to be eligible for a club coach. And I'd like you to note that clubs are not ever entitled to a club coach. We're a volunteer organization. There are only a certain number of people who are interested in being a coach, and therefore there is no sense of entitlement whatsoever. We will try. And one of the most important functions is to make sure that we're matching the right individuals with the right clubs. So if you have, for example, a very, very dominant club and a person who's interested in being a club coach, but that person tends to be quieter and shyer, it'll be harder for that person to actually make a difference. So a certain amount of matching has to happen. When you are the club coach, you're going to have your first meeting with the club. And what will happen, ideally, is you'll meet with the executive first and get a sense from the executive what their expectations are, what they want you to do, what they don't want you to do. Because they may have had a club coach before and they may know this didn't work for us. We'd like it to flow in some other way. I encourage you to be absolutely respectful in that meeting, even if they say things that maybe don't sound right. Listen first. Then ask the executive if you can have a few minutes on the agenda in the same way that an area director would do, and meet with the club. Don't start making your suggestions immediately. Start making them, go to 2 or 3 meetings first, and then start to make suggestions to the club. Ask them some good questions. What are the club's goals? Does the club actually want to make distinguished? Because sometimes the only goal the club actually has is to get enough members so that they can go back to doing what they've always been doing, which is just sort of trundling along with 12 members year in, year out. What have they tried before? And did it work? Which things didn't work? And do they have any sense of why those things didn't work? And how do they feel about suggestions for change? This is the critical one, because in so many cases, club members do not want you to make change. They are very happy meeting where they're meeting when they're meeting, because that is what they have always done, and if it was good enough for them, why isn't it good enough for anybody else who will come to their meeting? I don't know whether any of you are familiar with the CI Club, but I was a club coach for them, and they met just in a meeting place just beside Central Park, where there were absolutely no parking spaces, 0 parking spaces. And it didn't matter to them at all because they all came by bus. No problem. Every time they would have a campaign to get new members, the new members would tell them it was so hard to find a parking spot, and I had to pay, $8 at the bay to get at Portage Place to get a parking spot, and I wouldn't come back, not because you're not a great club, because you are, but I can't afford $8 every meeting. And they said, gee, isn't that too bad? And when I came in as club coach, I said, why don't we change the meeting place? And they said, no, we always meet here. We always have met here. We always will meet here because this is where our club meets. Period. When I wasn't looking, they started meeting somewhere else. Right, Kate? What happened when they moved?
Pretty much the same thing.
Wrong answer.
I was expecting a different answer, Kate.
And we know the end result.
Oh, actually, I don't. I've been out of touch with everything for 2 years. And so we lost them?
Yeah.
And that's sad. But that was a club that went on for a really long time, and they were very content with 12 members. As long as they had 12 members, they were happy, all the spots on the agenda were filled, and they didn't see a need for more membership growth, other than the sort of 1 or 2 people that would come in every year. So just because you come in as club coach does not mean that you actually have the authority to make a change. There has to be cooperation between you and the executive. A big part of your job is to help them assess what is going on for them. Ask for permission to conduct moments of truth. Sometimes they'll give it to you and sometimes they won't. There's a lot of reasons not to do moments of truth. What are some of the reasons not to do moments of truth? Time. It's a really long process. Another reason not to do moments of truth.
Might have to make a change.
You might have to make a change. You might notice that you're doing something wrong. Or somebody else in the group might notice that they're doing something wrong. Yeah.
So Joanne, could you split it into 2 meetings?
Yeah. And that's coming up on the next slide. But yes, you can actually split it into 2 meetings. It's more effective if you do it all at once, but you can split it. Is there another reason not to do moments of truth?
Know how.
Somebody doesn't know how to conduct it. And go ahead.
I was just going to say about if you have a guest in the room
Yes.
doing the moments of truth, may not be the right opportunity with a guest in the room to do moments of truth.
And that's the one I heard most. So thank you very much, for David. What David said is, if you've got a guest in the room, do you really want to wash your dirty laundry in public? Because moments of truth makes you look hard at yourself. On the other hand, I would counter by saying, if you're doing moments of truth and the guest sees that you are really interested in becoming a better and a stronger club and offering more to your members, that gives you even more clout inviting that guest to join. But that is, in fact, the one that I heard most often. We can't schedule moments of truth because it takes the whole meeting, and if we've got a guest coming in, we're stuck with a whole meeting of soul searching. I think it adds value to the guest. So moments of truth, of course, as we all know now, is about first impressions, how we orient our memberships, what fellowship looks like in our club, program planning, meeting organization, membership strength, and achievement of recognition. It will highlight some of the things that the club has not been doing as strongly. There can be emotions. There can be emotions. People can get really, really protective about what they're doing. So the person who is conducting moments of truth must be non-judgmental as they're going through the process and make sure that everyone is included in the process. So some things to consider. How accessible is the club meeting place? Is there signage? Victoria, is it okay if I use Louis Riel for a small example?
Since I'm the only one here, have at it.
Okay. I came as area director to Louis Riel Club, and it's one of those historical clubs that I feel a real tie to. The notification about where the meeting was held said in the 4th floor boardroom at 400 North
401 York.
401 York. Yeah, the Northway building. So I went there, and I was going to be early because I was the area director and I wanted to do it right. So I walked in half an hour before the meeting, got up to the 4th floor. There is no door on the entire 4th floor that says boardroom. Or room 415, which I think is the room number of the boardroom. There's no signage whatsoever that says there's a meeting here. So I thought to myself, if I was a guest off the street, came up here, I should say, isn't that too bad? And I shrug my shoulders and leave. It's a tiny little thing because that signage is not the responsibility of the club. That signage is the responsibility of the building manager. But as a guest, I had no idea. So one of the things that the club coach brings to the club is just new eyes. Because all the club members know where they meet. And if the guests don't actually walk in the door because they can't figure out which door to walk in, then they never hear that there's a problem. Have they publicized their meetings? Is there parking available? Are their meetings reliable or unreliable? There are some low member clubs who, if they hear from enough members that they're not going to be attending, will just cancel the meeting. The guest shows up, there's no meeting there, they assume that the meetings that they're in the wrong place, wrong time, and they never come back. So part of the job of the coach is to establish some reliable structure for the meetings. Are their websites up to date? And of course, Ed again spoke about this in great detail. If you're updating your website every week, there is not going to be a problem. But if you had a webmaster who created your website and then left the club, somebody else has to step into that role. And do they have a new members kit with pricing on it? Because it's very easy to hand a new guest a new member kit, and they don't know how much it costs, and they ask, and whoever they ask doesn't know how much it costs, and then they wander away. So those are the sorts of insights that you can bring to the club that they don't necessarily even know is a problem. These sort of structural pieces that people who are involved in it never see. And then of course, are they actually inviting their guests to join? Because when you're a low member club, you start to think of yourself as being unattractive. If nobody ever asks you to the prom, you may never go. And so if you don't see yourself as attractive, if the club members don't see themselves as attractive, they don't invite guests to join, and therefore the guests don't even know that they could have been invited to join. I waited for probably 10 years to join Toastmasters because I thought it was a closed organization that you had to be invited into. No word of a lie. Robert finally invited me to come to a meeting, and yeah, I've been doing that for the past 30 years now. So make sure you invite them, because people don't necessarily know that they're welcome to join. So back to Moments of Truth. It can be done in 2 1/2-hour sessions. It's available as a download. It doesn't cost you a thing. You just go onto the Toastmasters site, in the search engine, write in Moments of Truth, and the download just comes up. The club is doing an honest assessment. Be aware that sometimes emotions can be triggered and feelings can be hurt. So be cautious and gentle and kind. Be kind.
Or else.
Or else. And then develop an action plan, because you can do Moments of Truth every single week, but if you don't ever turn it into an action plan and say, this is what we're going to do, no changes will happen. And sometimes there will be resistance to time changes, place changes, because those things were chosen because it's convenient for the current members. So what happens if the members of a corporate club, for example, have been meeting at noon hour, and the company changes the amount of time they're offering for lunch? This was Taxmeisters a million years ago. The company changed, they used to have an hour for lunch. The company changed it to half an hour and said, if you want to continue going to your Toastmasters meeting, you have to take a half an hour of vacation time every week. Exactly. And the club just fell apart. I went to them and I said, you could meet at a different time. You could meet at the end of the day at 4:30 when your shift ends. You could meet at the beginning of the day at 7 o'clock in the morning. And their response was, if the company is being that hard with us, we're just going to fold. And they did. However, there are other times available. So just because something is convenient for the members now doesn't mean that it'll always be convenient for the members. And it's always worthwhile to start to play with other opportunities. Just be careful that you update the website. If you're trying out 4:30 in the afternoon, that you don't leave on your website that you're meeting at noon. All right, how to run a demo meeting. And again, I know Ed talked about it, but I'm just going to run through this again. First of all, select a convenient date for the members. I cannot tell you how many times people will arbitrarily choose a date, and then a couple weeks later, after they've advertised it and made the arrangements, somebody will say, oh, don't we have our corporate retreat that day? And then the whole demo meeting just falls apart, or you look bad. We had that at the Royal Bank one year. Advertise in all the usual places, that's always good, but then advertise in the unusual places, because that's going to give you a different audience. I remember when the Seven Oaks Club first was starting. Anybody here from that first iteration of the Seven Oaks Club? Do you know what they did? They made flyers. You remember?
I know what they did, yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Lyle.
They put flyers in the Garden City Shopping Center on all the cars.
On every car, and it worked.
They worked.
They had just a stack of people that came out, and many of them joined. It was a totally random move. I couldn't imagine doing it, but it worked. So advertise in some unusual places as well as the usual places. Decide, will there be food? And I always recommend you should decide yes, because I love eating. I think that I am not unusual. So I recommend that there be food. Make sure that there's an agenda and you keep to it. Ask the district for help, because if you've got only 6 members in your club, you need more bodies than that in order to run a successful demo meeting. So ask for the district for help. Make sure you have new members kits there, and make sure you have pricing on it. Suggested agenda, the president should welcome everybody. There should be a joke, and it should be non-offensive. Please, I cannot stress this enough. If you've got a club member who tells off-color jokes, do not let them on the agenda that day. Just a word to the wise. Have a word of the day. Let the people see what it's like to practice using unusual language. Have introductions. Have a speaker. And the introductions, of course, all the guests are going to be introducing themselves. At the end, congratulate them and say, well done, you've given your first mini speech. All uphill, all downhill from here. I recommend a speaker who's going to talk about the power of communication, why Toastmasters, or what you're going to get from it. Then have table topics. First table topic speaker is a member. The next 3 table topic speaker, you're going to invite up your guests. The table topics master has to be coached to make sure that they provide table topics that are open and easy. What was your best vacation? And not negative. What was your worst vacation? You don't want to leave people with a bad feeling, so encourage them to talk about things that give them joy. And the evaluator for table topics, a positive, 1 negative, 1 positive, or 1 positive, 1 suggestion for growth, 1 positive. Make sure that the evaluator knows that this isn't an opportunity to tear people down or prove how good Toastmasters are. Then have a Q&A and make sure you invite them to join. I don't know whether you're noticing, there is a theme here. Invite them to join. Right then and there, invite them to join. They don't have to come back and reassess. Many people come to a Toastmasters meeting because they intend to join. So offer them that opportunity. I've been out to so many clubs and talked to them about this, and they say, but it's pushy. Pushy. No, it is not pushy. It's being open and realizing that we have a quality product, a product that people need in their lives. You're giving them a gift by inviting them to join. And then speechcraft. So a lot of times people are telling me that they're less comfortable with the title speechcraft, and they're talking about Toastmasters boot camp, because everybody does boot camps these days, and that seems to be a comfortable model. If you're advertising for a speechcraft, suggest that they RSVP. There have been times where we've run a speechcraft and people show up, and we weren't expecting them, and we didn't have enough kits, and we didn't have enough materials because it was sort of open. So if you put on the poster that they should be RSVPing and give them an email address and a phone number, then you have a much higher likelihood of reaching them. Just a small provision about the phone number. The phone number ideally should be a cell phone number because this generation texts, and they could be texting infinitely to your landline and it goes nowhere. So ideally you're going to have your cell phone number rather than your landline number. As the club coach, work carefully with the speechcraft coordinator from the club and make sure that club members are being given roles and structural roles and speaking roles so the club doesn't feel alienated while the speechcraft is going on. So the club feels that they're part of the whole process. If you are interested, if you could put your name and your phone number and your email address